Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world, around the country, around the state, around the city. Welcome to a new episode of the Soul Stocking Sisters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Theresa J, Canada, and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to be talking about various topics, as you know, and I chose this particular episode to talk about politics, and education and political, I should say, participation, because we're in a very interesting time right now. And I just thought that you need to know a little bit of history about how education, political participation affects our lives. All right. So there are a lot of research things, we can talk about, which I'm not going to go to depth, but I want to just say, because of the time, I think it's important, because this is also education. I want to be able to talk about education issues on the podcast and other related pieces. And I'll be honest with you, I think everything that we touch in our society, education's involved, whether someone has told you that or not. Many people can get around that, as we know, but the majority of us know you're not able to get beyond that. You have to do that and more to be able to make a difference and be able to just exist in our society. So I will be talking about basically education, political participation. If you look at the research, it talks about how the more education one has, the person, basically there's a relationship between education and interest in politics. Now, some of the research says that education exposes one to what? Diverse perspectives, critical thinking skills, a deeper understanding of societal issues, blah, 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 which can increase awareness and lead to greater political engagement. That's the historical basic response someone make to that. But let me just also say this. If you look at the history in this country, specifically when it relates to segregation, integration issues, not every single person who was prominent or who got involved or who was engaged in this were highly, quote unquote, educated. Just look at Fannie Lou Hamer. And if you don't know who she is, research, look it up, okay? I'm not going to do a specific episode on Fannie Lou, but you need to know about this wonderful Black woman who stood up when many people who may have been more educated did not speak up. So maybe the traditional view is that the more education you have, you're more likely to participate and have more interest in politics, blah, blah, and that's possibly true. But at the same time, it's not something that you have to always have, because otherwise we'll never get anything done. So I'm just saying to you that think about how many groups of people who were disenfranchised, if you want to use that term, who were not able to vote in this country. And there were literacy laws, which if you don't know, there were literacy laws in this country. So if you couldn't pass the quote unquote literacy laws, you weren't able to vote. And of course, you go back to the amendments when when Black men was able to vote, and how that was something that people didn't want people to do. And you had to how many jelly beans in a jar or how many marbles in a jar was like to determine whether you could vote or not. So those kinds of things. And you need to know about those. So please definitely do your research. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but that's also important. So yes, education, and interest in politics, pretty relevant. But much of it had to do with how it impacted a person's life, not just something to do, because you wanted to have a better life. So as a result, politics was one area that people had to get involved in so they can improve their lives. And it goes back to when I talked about, the big major education legislation from the same Supreme Court, Brown versus Board of Education, that legislative piece, the 1954 decision. That was a major piece in related to education. And what did it say? That, um, you know, equal opportunity for everybody in education at that point, because they were segregated schools across this country. And it's interesting, not just in the South, but also in the North. And not really too much has changed. And we'll go into that later. But my point I'm trying to say to you is that you need to understand some of the issues of how politics can, in fact, impact education and vice versa. So I'll be talking about a couple of other issues in terms of politics effect on education, politics in terms of how it affects the United States economy, which is a big deal, and also other areas related to the relationship, how we in versus the state versus the local governments and the states in terms of education and the politics that go along with that, in terms of the types of schooling that takes place in each state and what's funding's like and what's not being funded and who funds. Those are all issues that I want to address in upcoming episodes related to education and political participation and the effects of politics on education. So this is just giving you a precursor to look forward to hearing those some of these debates. I may probably also have maybe a guest coming and talking about one of these topics as well. If not, I'll be talking about it. Okay. So anyway, I just thank you for just tuning in and staying in touch with me, and definitely stay on board and keep subscribing to the channel and pass this on to your friends and relatives, and maybe your people who aren't your friends. Maybe they need to listen to this as well. Okay. So that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll have another episode available probably next week on the Silk Stocking Sisters podcast. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye now.